Tonight, we're stepping back in time to explore the elaborate, rule-laden world of Victorian courtship. And believe me, if you think dating in the age of swipes, ghosting, and unread messages is tricky, just wait until you hear about the tangled web of etiquette manuals, ever-present chaperones, and unspoken laws that dictated every interaction between men and women in the 1850s. This was an era when even a fleeting glance carried social weight, when tipping your hat replaced texting, and when a seemingly innocent gift from the wrong man could spell social disaster. Before we begin, if stories like these help you drift off at night, I'd truly appreciate a like or a subscribe. I always love seeing where people are tuning in from, so drop a comment with your city and the current time. It still amazes me how so many of you fall asleep to these tales from all across the globe. Now get comfortable. Take a deep, unhurried breath. Let yourself sink into whatever surface is holding you. We're traveling back to London, 1855. And trust me, by the end of the story, you'll be deeply grateful for your modern-day mattress. Back then, making love didn't mean what it does today. It referred to the carefully choreographed process of courtship, the delicate dance of trying to win someone's heart the proper way. And if you hope to navigate the social terrain of romantic possibility in Victorian England, you had to know the rules or risk ruin. So congratulations. You've just awakened in May of 1855 in the heart of London. But not the London of phone booths and double-decker buses. This is Queen Victoria's London, where thick coal smoke clings to the dawn mist, horse hooves echo sharply on cobblestone streets, and the city smells. Well, let's just say it's not quite rose-scented. The Thames River, which runs not far from your home, carries the waste of nearly 2.5 million people. And on warm days like today, that odor drifts right through the open window beside your bed. Your nose wrinkles instinctively as you pull the weighty wool blanket up to your chin. You're 22 years old, the daughter of a respectable middle-class family. Your father owns a modest but thriving haberdashery, a shop that sells men's clothing and accessories. This means your family lives comfortably, if not luxuriously. You eat well, dress decently, but still have responsibilities. The downside? You're a woman in 1855, and that means your future, every possibility it might hold, hinges on one outcome: marrying well. And the social mechanics of achieving that goal, about as complex as learning to waltz while balancing teacups. You stretch under the coarse cotton bedding, the quilt pressing down like an extra body. There's no central heating here. It hasn't even been imagined yet. Cold air seeps through the stone walls, a chill that starts in your bones and stays there. Your housemaid, Mary, has been up for hours already. You hear her on the stairs, hauling a heavy coal scuttle up to light the fireplace in your bedroom. The door creaks open. Mary steps in, arms wrapped around the bulky metal bucket. Her hands are black with soot, and you notice a slight wince in her movement, likely a sore shoulder from all the lifting. She kneels at the hearth, expertly arranging kindling and chunks of coal. Within moments, flames flicker to life, casting a warm orange glow across the room. "Good morning, miss," Mary says, wiping her palms on her apron. "Your mother says to dress properly today. The Weatherbees are calling this afternoon with their son." Your stomach flutters. The Weatherbees. Their son, Thomas, 26, just back from India where he served as a clerk for the East India Company. Your mother has been hinting at this visit for weeks. You know precisely what it means. This isn't just tea and chit-chat. It's an audition. You sit up slowly, the cold air brushing your shoulders through your nightdress. The fire offers a little warmth, but it will be a while before the room loses its chill completely. Mary is already laying out your clothes. Not your usual day dress, your best one. The deep navy wool trimmed with mother-of-pearl buttons. The same dress your mother spent 3 months saving for. Mary, you ask, voice raspy with sleep. What have you heard about Mr. Weather? She glances toward the hallway, then leans in. Well, miss, their maid says he's got all his teeth, which is better than most men his age. Doesn't drink much, just has a fondness for cigars. And she pauses, laying your corset on the bed. He's been in India for 4 years. Might have come back with unusual opinions. Your eyes fall on the corset. That familiar mix of dread and resignation stirs. Every morning, Mary laces you into that unforgiving garment, whalebone and cotton, engineered to crush your ribs into the fashionable hourglass silhouette. Breathing deeply becomes a luxury. Moving freely, almost impossible. You swing your legs over the side of the bed. The floor is wooden, wide-planked and cold no matter the season. You stand as Mary approaches to remove your nightgown. There is no privacy for women like you. Mary has dressed and undressed you daily for years, and will continue to do so until you're married. Then, another servant, your husband's or one hired for your new household, will take her place. The chemise goes on first, a thin cotton shift that feels like gauze. Then the corset. Mary pulls it around your torso and begins the rhythmic tugs of the laces, each one tighter than the last. By the end, your breathing is shallow, confined to the upper portion of your lungs. Not too tight, Mary, you manage to say. As loose as fashion allows, miss, she replies gently. Your mother wants you able to speak clearly when the gentleman arrives. She adds the next layers. First, a small padded bustle, tied around your waist to give your skirts that exaggerated fullness at the back. Then come the petticoats, 3 of them, each adding weight and volume. Finally, the dress is lowered over your head. Altogether, you're wearing about 15 pounds of fabric, and the day hasn't even properly begun. Pleasant one, so long as both of you conduct yourselves with decorum and good sense. She pauses, smoothing the folds of her skirt as if gathering her thoughts. I've been corresponding with Mrs. Wetherb, and she shared a few details about her son that you should hear. He's well educated, apparently disciplined, and has strong prospects for advancement within the company. He also managed to save a respectable sum during his time abroad. Most importantly, his mother says he's eager to settle down and start a family. You nod, though your stomach twists slightly at the phrase. Starting a family. Those 3 words carry so much weight. It's a euphemism, of course. A tidy phrase meant to obscure the unspoken realities of marriage that no one dares to discuss aloud, but that hover like a silent fog over every conversation. There are some rules, your mother continues with a quiet firmness, that you must remember this afternoon. She sits forward slightly, her voice dropping into the confidential tone that means she's about to quote the etiquette books she reads with religious devotion. Firstly, do not accept any gifts, not even a ribbon or a book. A gentleman must not offer presents to a lady he is not engaged to, and accepting them implies you're encouraging his attentions improperly. You nod, remembering the passage from The Young Lady's Friend, printed in 1837. One gift begets another, and the lady who accepts a present risks inviting a declaration she cannot properly return. Secondly, your mother says, there is to be no physical contact, not so much as a handshake unless he is formally introduced by your father, and even then only a brief, polite clasp. Should he offer his arm, you may take it lightly. Otherwise, Keep your hands folded neatly in your lap. You think about how strange this must sound to someone from your own century. The casual touch of a hand, a brush on the shoulder, a warm embrace, all forbidden until marriage or near enough to it. In 1855, touch between the unmarried is not casual. It's a deliberate act with social implications. Third, she continues, let him guide the conversation, but don't be afraid to let your intelligence show. Thomas has been educated. He'll expect a woman who can carry a conversation beyond the weather, but do not contradict him outright. Disagreement must be handled with tact. Suggest rather than refute. You've practiced this your whole life, being smart but not intimidating, witty but not sharp, knowledgeable but never boastful. It's a balancing act women of your class perform daily, like walking a tightrope in petticoats. Your mother reaches out to adjust a curl near your temple. Lastly, remember, he's observing just as much as you are. Watch how he treats Mary, how he addresses your father, whether he remains composed if something small goes wrong. These will reveal his character far more than anything he says while sipping tea. She rises with a rustle of fabric. They will arrive at exactly 3. We'll serve tea and the small cakes cook made yesterday. You'll sit on the settee by the window. The light falls nicely there. I'll sit in the armchair next to you, and your father will join us after he speaks with Mr. Weather privately. After she leaves, you're left alone with your thoughts and a steadily ticking clock. With hours to spare, you wander downstairs into the family's modest library. It's really more a room with 2 bookcases and a window seat than a true library, but it holds a cherished quietness. You select a volume of poetry, a safe, appropriate choice for an unmarried lady. Novels, after all, are still viewed with suspicion. You try to lose yourself in the verses, but your mind drifts again and again to the afternoon ahead. Upstairs, the house begins to stir with purpose. Cook bangs pots in the kitchen. The housemaid is outside sweeping the front steps. Twice daily work thanks to the grime and soot of London streets. Your father is in his study, going over the ledgers for the shop. The whole house smells of burning coal, beeswax polish, and the lavender water your mother sprinkles on the linens. Through the window, you watch the street. A milk cart passes. Its driver shouts his wares with the easy rhythm of someone who's done this 1,000 times. 2 women walk arm in arm down the sidewalk, their skirts swaying in rhythm. You note the fine quality of their fabrics, better than yours, and know instantly that they're from wealthier families. Their maid follows, a few respectful steps behind, burdened with parcels. A gentleman on horseback trots by. His posture is erect, his top hat perfect, his coat long and formal. As he passes, he touches the brim of his hat, though he doesn't know you. That small gesture is expected, a mark of manners and civility between classes and strangers. Time creeps forward. You read a few lines, arrange the flowers in the parlor vase, and rehearse your scales on the pianoforte. Another of the required accomplishments for a lady of your standing, along with needlework, a bit of French, and the ability to sketch decently. You aren't expected to excel, just to be proficient enough to prove your upbringing was proper. Lunch is simple: cold meats, cheese, pickled vegetables, and bread still warm from the oven. You eat sparingly, thanks to both the corset pressing on your ribs and the fact that your nerves are making your stomach flutter. Your mother talks cheerfully about small neighborhood news. Mrs. Tomlinson's niece has arrived from Bath. The butcher's wife is again pregnant, but her words move quickly, as if she's hurrying past her own nervousness. By 2:30, it's time to prepare for the encounter. You return to your bedroom to check every detail. Mary has laid out fresh gloves, soft white cotton ones with small pearl buttons, and your locket, the one with the miniature painting of your grandmother inside, is the only jewelry you'll wear today. Anything more would suggest vanity or worse, forwardness. You practice sitting on the settee in your parlor. Sounds silly, but in this outfit, even sitting is a production. You must lower yourself carefully, making sure your skirts cascade around you just so. Hands folded, back straight. When rising, it's all about subtlety. Press down with your hands, lift with grace, no wobbling or obvious effort. At 10 minutes to 3, you take your place in the front room. Your mother is seated beside you with her embroidery hoop, not stitching so much as giving her hands something to do. Your father hovers near the hearth, glancing at his pocket watch every other moment. The scent of beeswax and fresh roses fills the space. Afternoon light filters through the window beside you, casting your silhouette in the flattering tones your mother had planned for. The clock ticks toward the hour. You press your palms together inside your gloves to keep them from sweating, willing your face into an expression of calm. Every second feels like a minute. Then, at precisely 3 o'clock, comes the knock. There's a firm, well-timed knock at the front door. Your father straightens his jacket, glances one final time at his pocket watch, and strides out into the hallway. From the parlor, you hear the low murmur of voices, coats being removed, the crisp clack of a walking stick being placed into the umbrella stand. Then come the approaching footsteps, and the sound of your heartbeat feels thunderous against the rigid stays of your corset. Mr. Wetherb enters first. Thomas's father, silver sideburns trimmed with precision, his frame slightly bent with age and years of sitting over ledgers. Mrs. Wetherb follows, rounded, flushed from the ride, wrapped in burgundy silk that gleams under the light, her brooch sparkling like a miniature sunburst. And finally, Thomas steps in. He's taller than you expected. Brown hair carefully parted down the middle, neat matanchop whiskers lining his narrow face. His complexion is sun-warmed, a remnant, no doubt, of his time in the Indian heat. There's something studied in his movements, a practiced stillness that gives the impression of self-control. He wears a black frock coat that reaches his knees, gray trousers creased just right, and a high-collared white shirt that looks like it might saw into his neck if he turns too quickly. Your father's voice rings out in formal tones. Mr. and Mrs. Wetherb, may I introduce my wife, Mrs. Hartwell, and my daughter, Miss Ellalinina Hartwell. You rise from the settee just as you rehearsed, slowly, gracefully, letting your skirts fall into the perfect pool around your feet. You dip into a practiced curtsy, just enough bend to signal respect, but not so much as to appear servile. A pleasure to meet you at last, Miss Hartwell. Mrs. Wetherb says warmly, her eyes scanning you with polite interest. Thomas has been most eager for this introduction. Thomas bows slightly. Miss Hartwell, he says in a voice deeper than you anticipated, with a subtle accent you can't quite place, possibly a faint echo of his time abroad. Mr. Wetherb, you reply, offering the briefest of eye contact before lowering your gaze. Direct gazes are acceptable for greetings, but lingering ones could be misconstrued as forward. Everyone takes their prescribed places, like actors stepping into blocking cues. Thomas sits in the chair across from you, close enough for polite conversation, far enough to avoid impropriety. The parents arrange themselves nearby but angled just enough to suggest they're involved in their own exchange, even as they monitor every flicker of your interaction. I trust your return from India was smooth? You venture. knowing this is a safe and appropriate opening. Indeed, Thomas replies with the calm certainty of someone who chooses words carefully. Though long, 3 months aboard ship provides ample time for reflection. He pauses, a flicker of something unreadable passing through his expression. Relief, maybe, or hesitation. The climate there can be demanding for those unaccustomed to such intensity. You nod, sympathetic, though your only point of comparison is London's mild summers. I imagine the heat must have been quite oppressive. We complain here when it reaches 70 degrees. Quite right, he agrees. In Bombay, we often saw temperatures exceeding 100. And the humidity. He shakes his head slightly. It makes the very air feel like soup, thick and unrelenting. As he speaks, he shifts in his seat and you notice how his fingers brush his collar, just loosening it the barest amount. Not enough to be improper, just enough to suggest lingering discomfort. Or memory. I found myself developing a deep appreciation for English rain. He adds with a small smile. You return it with a genuine one. Less of the careful, measured smile you'd practiced in the mirror and more of something real. Rain is one thing we can always promise. The conversation moves forward like a carefully choreographed dance. Thomas shares anecdotes about the markets in Bombay. Vibrant stalls filled with spices and silks, unfamiliar fruits, languages layered one atop another. He describes the challenge of managing clerks who spoke half a dozen tongues, the unfamiliar customs he had to quickly learn. You reply with smaller experiences, the books you've been reading, your piano practice, observations about the neighborhood. Nothing too personal. Everything curated to reflect your upbringing, your refinement, your suitability. Still, as you speak, you watch him, just as your mother told you to, and he, it seems, is doing the same. When Mary enters to serve tea, Thomas nods to her with genuine politeness. A small gesture, but meaningful. Many men of his station wouldn't acknowledge a servant at all. When your father makes a dry joke about the unpredictability of London weather, Thomas laughs. Not the strained laugh of politeness, but a soft chuckle that reaches his eyes. And then there's the teacup incident. Mrs. Wetherb, shifting her arm to reach for a plate of cakes, nudges her teacup. It topples, hot tea splashing across the tablecloth in a sudden, clattering moment. Thomas is on his feet instantly, not rushed or dramatic, but precise. A clean handkerchief appears from his pocket before anyone can speak. "Allow me," he says calmly, mopping the spill before it reaches the edge. "Oh, what a mess I've made." Mrs. Wetherb flusters, dabbing at the cup with her own lace handkerchief. "Not at all," your mother replies soothingly. "These things happen." Mary returns swiftly with a fresh cloth and helps clean up the rest. "But you saw something else. Something you suspect no one else caught." When the cup clattered to the floor, Thomas flinched. Not just a startled reaction, but something deeper. His shoulders tightened, his eyes darted. Not toward the mess, but toward the door. Like he was calculating the nearest escape. It was gone in a second, but it lingered in your mind. The visit lasts exactly 1 hour, as etiquette demands. Any shorter would seem rude. Longer would be presumptuous. As the Weatherbys rise to leave, Thomas turns to your father. "Mr. Hartwell, might I request a private word?" Your father nods and gestures him toward the hallway. You watch them through the open door, two silhouettes in quiet conversation. Thomas speaks with controlled gestures. Your father listens, nods slowly. After a few moments, they shake hands. Thomas returns to the parlor. "Miss Hartwell," he says with quiet composure, "with your father's permission, I would be most honored to call on you again. Perhaps this Sunday afternoon." Your heart gives a tiny skip. This is it, the formal beginning of a courtship. "That would be most agreeable, Mr. Weather." After they depart, your mother launches straight into her assessment. "Well," she begins, resettling herself in her chair, "he seems respectable, good manners, polite to Mary. And did you see how he reacted when I spilled the tea? No hesitation. Your father joins in. He saved quite a sum, enough to establish a household without needing assistance from either family. And his company appears eager to promote him. But your thoughts are elsewhere, on that flicker of tension in his eyes, the careful way he moved, the too quick reaction to the sound of a falling cup. There's more to Thomas Weather than tea and travel stories. Sunday is warm for late May. You wear your pale green dress with delicate white blossoms, the one your mother says brightens your eyes. This time, no corset struggles, no trembling hands over breakfast. You are beginning to learn the rhythm of these visits. At 2 o'clock sharp, Thomas arrives. This time, he holds a small bouquet of sweet peas, soft, fragrant blooms of purple and white. "These are from my mother's garden," he explains with a slight bow. "I thought they might suit your taste." As you take them, your gloved fingers brush against his. The jolt is brief, electric, not just static. Something more. "They're beautiful," you say, burying your nose in the petals to hide your flushing cheeks. "I hoped you'd think so," he says, and there's a look in his eyes, a glint that says this choice wasn't at all random. The second visit feels markedly different from the first. With the initial formality out of the way, conversation flows more easily. Thomas shares glimpses of his upbringing, being the youngest of 4 brothers, constantly striving to stand out and be noticed. You respond with tales of your own education, the small school you attended, your lessons in French and drawing, and just enough mathematics to manage household accounts. During a pause in the conversation, Thomas leans forward slightly, his tone lowering. "I must admit," he confesses, "that London has been rather overwhelming since my return. After 4 years in quieter, more structured surroundings, the noise and movement here is almost disorienting." You study him. Gentlemen don't typically admit to discomfort. "Perhaps it's not about being proper by English standards," you reply carefully, "but about finding your own way of being English again. For years is a long time. You've seen and done things most people here couldn't begin to imagine." There's a flicker in his expression, surprise perhaps. "You're quite perceptive, Miss Hartwell." Over the weeks that follow, Sunday visits become a quiet ritual. Each week, Thomas arrives at precisely 2 o'clock and stays for exactly an hour. Sometimes you talk in the parlor, sometimes you walk the narrow garden path behind your home, always within view of your mother or Aunt Caroline, who now joins with her needlework and sharp ears. As the visits accumulate, so do the layers of conversation. You learn that Thomas has trouble sleeping, something he mentions only in passing, when explaining why he appears tired on Monday mornings. He admits, almost bashfully, that he once tried writing poetry, though he hasn't shared it with anyone. He tells you about the spices he learned to enjoy, the colorful festivals he witnessed, and the challenges of managing cross-cultural communication in a vast colonial bureaucracy. In return, you share your own truths, your frustration that women's education stops short of anything useful, your quiet dream of seeing places beyond London's soot-stained skyline, your guilty love of novels, especially the ones your friend Catherine lends you, the slightly scandalous ones you read only by candlelight. Then, on the fourth Sunday, he makes a suggestion that sends your heart into a flutter. "Miss Hartwell," Thomas says with a glance toward your mother, seated nearby with her embroidery, "might I request your company at the exhibition at the Crystal Palace next Saturday?" Naturally, with appropriate chaperonage. The air seems to pause. Public outing together. It would be a clear signal to the neighborhood. Not an engagement, but certainly a step closer. You glance at your mother. Her hands freeze for the barest second, her needle suspended. She doesn't speak, waiting for you. "I would be delighted," you say. Your voice is steady as you can manage despite the excitement rising within you. The Crystal Palace. Rebuilt in South London after the Great Exhibition of 1851, it represents everything modern and forward-looking about the Victorian age. An enormous structure of glass and iron, it rises from Sydenham Hill like something conjured from a dream. Saturday dawns clear and bright. You wear your finest gown, deep blue silk with a fitted jacket and matching hat adorned with just the right number of ribbons. Your gloves are white kid leather, and you carry a beaded reticule that holds a handkerchief, a vial of smelling salts, and a few carefully selected coins. Thomas arrives in a hired landau, an open carriage that allows visibility and respectability. Aunt Caroline accompanies you, installed in the seat opposite with her sharpest hat and even sharper stare, the one with feathers that seem to point in moral judgment. The drive is an event in itself. London streets are thick with life. Carts, carriages, riders, and pedestrians all jostling for space. Street vendors shout their wares. Fresh flowers, penny a bunch. Eels for pie. Sweep your chimney. The air is a mix of coal smoke and hot pastry, horse sweat and humanity. Thomas points out landmarks as you pass. The soaring Gothic towers of the new Houses of Parliament, the darkened stones of Westminster Abbey, the bridges arching across the Thames like metal ribbons. On the river, boats crowd the current. Steamers trailing soot, sailboats with tall masts, and smaller vessels darting between them like insects. As the carriage moves south of the river, the scenery changes. The polished streets give way to tighter alleys, smaller homes, and denser air. The smell becomes sharper, a blend of industry and too many people living too close with too few drains. But then you crest the rise of Sydenham Hill, and the Crystal Palace looms ahead, gleaming, immense, unreal. Its glass panels catch the light and scatter it across the garden below, where flower beds form intricate patterns and fountains glint like diamonds in motion. It's magnificent, you whisper, momentarily forgetting yourself. Indeed, Thomas replies, offering you his arm as you disembark. Though it reminds me somewhat of the palaces I saw in India. All this glass and iron, its confidence made visible. Inside, the scale is almost incomprehensible. The central hall stretches like a cathedral. Exotic plants tower in indoor gardens, their leaves brushing the rafters. Everywhere, there are displays, mechanical wonders, art installations, cultural artifacts from every corner of the empire. A marble statue stands beside a steam engine. Butterflies from South America rest behind glass beside maps of ancient Rome. Thomas guides you gently through the crowds, attentive without being fussy. When the throng thickens, he steers you toward quieter alcoves. When you pause to admire an exhibit, he waits silently until you're ready to move on. When Aunt Caroline declares she needs refreshment, He locates a tea room within minutes. It's there, while your chaperone is occupied with her tea and scone, that Thomas leans toward you and speaks in a voice only you can hear. "Miss Hartwell," he says softly, "I hope I'm not overstepping, but I find myself very fond of these afternoons, and of your company." Your breath hitches slightly. This isn't quite a declaration, but it's far from nothing. You glance at Aunt Caroline, but she's engrossed in attacking her scone like a battlefield. "I enjoy them as well," you whisper. "I had considered—" He begins, then pauses. "That is, I wondered if—" But perhaps this isn't the right place for such a conversation. You understand at once. He's approaching the edge of a proposal, but not quite crossing it. Not yet. Not in public. Not without permission. "Perhaps," you say gently, "a quieter setting might be more appropriate for some things." His eyes meet yours, and in that brief look, more is said than words could manage. You aren't rejecting him. You're preserving the ritual, the etiquette, the slow, structured dance that defines all courtships of your time. The rest of the afternoon passes in a soft daze. You admire iridescent birds from South Asia whose feathers shimmer like oil on water. You watch a demonstration of a new photographic method that captures a likeness in minutes rather than hours. You sample a slice of pineapple, its sweetness almost shocking against your tongue. But beneath it all, there's a deeper hum, an undercurrent that has nothing to do with exhibitions or curiosities. It's the growing understanding between you and Thomas, the shared silence, the quiet glances, the way he steps just slightly closer than etiquette demands, but never too far. By the time you return home, the sun casting gold across London's rooftops, you feel certain. Something is shifting, something inevitable, something extraordinary. Tuesday evening arrives accompanied by a thunderstorm. Rain lashes the windows, and thunder rolls like distant drums. You're seated in the parlor beside your mother, the lamplight golden and flickering as you quietly work on your embroidery. It's nearly 8, too late for social visits. So when Mary appears in the doorway looking visibly unsettled, you immediately sense something out of the ordinary. "Begging your pardon, ma'am," Mary says, voice tight with urgency. "But Mr. Thomas Wetherbe is at the door. He says he must speak with the master. Urgently." Your mother's eyebrows lift, her expression shifting from calm to sharply alert. Your father, still clutching his newspaper from the study, appears just as puzzled. Through the parlor window, you glimpse Thomas's hired carriage waiting outside in the downpour, its lanterns glowing in the rain-soaked street. "Show him into the study," your father instructs after a beat. "Elalina, you and your mother will remain here." Of course, you remain seated, but your senses stretch toward the hallway like invisible wires. You hear the low murmur of voices beyond the closed door. Your father speaking occasionally, Thomas responding at greater length. Though the words are muffled, the tone is serious, focused. The minutes crawl by. You clutch your embroidery frame, forgotten in your lap, your fingers motionless while your thoughts race. After nearly 20 minutes, an eternity in such circumstances, footsteps approach. Your father enters the parlor alone, but the look on his face tells you everything before he even opens his mouth. "Elalina," he says, voice thick with solemnity but softened by something almost like relief. "Mr. Wetherbe has asked for permission to pay his addresses to you. I have given my consent." The embroidery hoop slips from your hands, landing on the carpet with a quiet thump. This is it. He wants to marry you. After 6 weeks of meticulous courtship, countless conversations under supervision, carefully crafted remarks, and orchestrated pauses, Thomas is prepared to take the next step. He wishes to speak with you directly tomorrow afternoon, your father continues. I told him he may call it too. Your mother will be present, of course, but he will be permitted to present his proposal personally. Your mother gasps, half gasp, half joyous squeal, and then immediately composes herself. Oh, Elenina, she exclaims, already rising to her feet. We must decide what you'll wear. Cook should prepare something nice. And perhaps we should take out the good china. Mother, you interrupt gently, your hands trembling just enough to be noticed. Perhaps we should hear what he has to say before planning all the details. But deep inside, you already know. He will propose. And you, barring a last-minute change of heart, will say yes. The truth is, marriage in 1855 isn't a leap of romantic idealism. It's a crossing into a new state of being, from which there is no socially acceptable return. Once married, your identity shifts entirely. Your property becomes his. Your name changes. Your legal autonomy disappears. Even your children, if you have them, will be his in the eyes of the law. And yet, what are the alternatives? You're 22. The age where people start whispering the words, on the shelf. Your family can't support you forever. Thomas is intelligent, gentle, and he seems genuinely to care for you. In a world where affection is not guaranteed in a marriage, that alone is a kind of fortune. Wednesday drags on at a torturous pace. You change outfits 3 times before settling on a gray wool dress with violet piping, serious but not severe, respectable but still flattering. Mary struggles twice with your hair before it finally settles into the proper braided coil. At precisely 2 o'clock, Thomas arrives. He's wearing his best black coat and a clean white shirt. The collar looks like it might cut into his neck. It's so sharply starched. In his hands, he carries a small, square velvet box. Your mother leads him to the parlor and assumes her place in the armchair, needlework in hand, close enough to monitor the interaction, far enough to offer a semblance of privacy. You sit, spine straight, gloves folded on your lap. Thomas takes the seat across from you, just as he did during those first visits. But everything feels different now. The air itself seems thicker, charged. Miss Hartwell, he begins, then pauses, takes a breath. Elenina, if I may, I've spoken with your father, and with your permission, I would like to speak to your heart. You nod, your voice temporarily lost. These past weeks, he continues, growing steadier with each word, have been among the most meaningful of my life. Your thoughtfulness, your clarity of mind, your quiet strength. They've shown me a kind of companionship I didn't dare expect. He drops to one knee beside the settee and opens the velvet box. Inside is a delicate ring, a modest diamond surrounded by tiny pearls, set in warm yellow gold. It is not extravagant, but it is beautiful and clearly chosen with care. Elenina Hartwell, Thomas says softly, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Your breath catches. The room seems to go silent around you. Yes, you whisper, and then more clearly, yes, Thomas, I would be honored. The relief in his face is immediate and overwhelming. He slips the ring onto your gloved hand, the first time your bare fingers have touched. His hand is warm, slightly calloused. You feel the contact all the way up your arm like a current. There, he murmurs. Now it's official. From the corner of the room, your mother makes a tiny sound. something between a gasp and a muffled sob. When you glance over, she's dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, pretending to focus on her embroidery. The remainder of the visit passes in a haze of logistical chatter. The engagement will be announced in Sunday's newspaper. The wedding is scheduled for 6 months hence. Enough time for you to prepare your trousseau and for Thomas to secure a suitable residence. He's found a house in Kensington. 3 bedrooms, proper kitchen, tiny garden. It will be ready for rent in the autumn. I know it's not grand, Thomas says, sounding slightly apologetic, but it's respectable and close enough to my office that I can walk on fair weather days. It sounds perfect, you reply, and you mean it. The idea of having your own home, your own space to manage, your own world to create, is more luxurious than any ball or necklace. After Thomas leaves, your mother enters what she calls her engagement planning mode. Lists begin to materialize: what must be sewn, purchased, delivered, written. Invitations, fittings, announcements. But the biggest change is immediate. You are no longer simply Miss Hartwell. You are now, formally, a betrothed woman. And with that comes new rights and new responsibilities. The following months slip by with startling speed. The house in Kensington is officially yours, well, Thomas's, but soon to be your shared home. He brings you to see it one clear, windswept afternoon in September. It's not grand, but charming. Narrower than your childhood home, but bright and full of character. Large windows stretch from floor to ceiling in the sitting room, bathing the space in golden afternoon light. A petite garden sits at the rear, the soil rich enough for herbs, flowers, or a few tomatoes if you're ambitious. The kitchen is newly built, Thomas says proudly, swinging open the tall cabinet doors to reveal shelves that glide smoothly. There's even a proper range. No open hearth nonsense. You run your fingers along the clean wooden countertop, imagining the warmth of fresh bread rising, the clatter of spoons, the scent of cinnamon in the air. The idea that this place will soon be yours, to manage, to decorate, to fill with your life, feels surreal. It suits you, Thomas says gently, and when you turn to him, he isn't looking at the house. He's looking at you. In October, the invitations are posted. Cream paper embossed with gold script, sealed with wax. 100 guests. A modest affair by society standards, but ample enough to prove respectability. You pose for a formal photograph, your engagement portrait. Standing beside Thomas, your gloved hand resting lightly on his arm, both of you unsmiling in accordance with photographic customs of the day. Your mother organizes every detail with military precision. Your wedding dress is being made by Madame Fournier, a French-trained seamstress who works from a shop above a flower vendor in Bloomsbury. The gown is ivory silk trimmed in lace, its skirts wide, its sleeves modest. Each fitting is an exercise in patience, but the final result is breathtaking. In the mornings, you embroider linens and handkerchiefs for your trousseau. In the afternoons, you take long walks with your mother, talking of everything and nothing. Sometimes she recalls her own wedding. Sometimes she slips into practical advice. How to manage servants, how to negotiate with grocers, which butcher gives the best cuts of beef at fair prices. By November, a new feeling begins to rise. Something between nervous excitement and looming inevitability. The days grow shorter. The air becomes sharp. Fires are lit earlier, and the wedding date creeps closer. The ceremony is set for the second Saturday in December. A winter wedding. You had always imagined spring, but winter, as your mother insists, lends solemnity and elegance. And truthfully, you've begun to find beauty in the bare trees, the crisp blue skies, the hush that seems to fall over the world as the year winds down. The night before the wedding, you barely sleep. The house is silent, but your mind is noisy. You rise before dawn and sit by the window, watching the pale light creep into the sky. Mary enters quietly, bringing tea and a slice of toast, which you forget to eat. Her face is soft with sympathy. "Excited, miss?" she asks, setting the tray beside you. "Yes," you say truthfully. "And terrified." She nods, as if she's heard that 100 times. "Best kind of weddings are both," she says. "The ceremony is held at St. Mary's Church, not far from your family's home. The morning is cold but dry, the streets swept clean, the sky a soft gray. Bells toll gently as you arrive. Your father offers his arm, and you take it, your fingers trembling. Inside, the church is filled with candlelight and evergreen garlands. The scent of pine and beeswax fills the space. You can feel every eye on you as you step into the aisle, your veil brushing the ground, your heart thundering against your ribs. Thomas waits at the altar, stiff in his formal coat, his expression solemn but tender. He doesn't smile, but his eyes hold yours with such intensity you nearly stumble. The words are spoken, vows exchanged, rings placed. You become Mrs. Thomas Wetherb. Outside, the photographer arranges you both for the post-ceremony portrait. You hold a small bouquet of winter roses. Thomas stands beside you, one gloved hand at the small of your back. The reception is modest. Tea, sandwiches, cakes, and speeches. Laughter filters through the clinking of china. Your mother cries again, discreetly. Your father's toast is brief but heartfelt. By dusk, you are escorted to your carriage. The luggage has already gone ahead to your new home. Your dress is carefully arranged, your coat buttoned up to your chin. The crowd waves as you pull away. Friends, neighbors, relatives, all fading into shadows as the gas lamps flicker to life. Inside the carriage, Thomas is quiet at first. "Do you feel all right?" he asks gently. You nod. "I think I'm in shock." "I am too," he admits. Then, after a moment, "In a good way. Your new home is warm when you arrive." Mary had come ahead to prepare it. The parlor glows. Tea waits on the side table. Everything feels surreal. You're no longer a guest. You live here now. Thomas shows you where everything is, the pantry, the coat hooks, the little drawer where he keeps extra coins. You nod, absorbing it all. Then he says softly, "Would you like to see your room?" He leads you upstairs. The room is simple. A bed, a vanity table, a small wardrobe. On the nightstand, a vase of fresh flowers, sweet peas, like the ones from your second meeting. The scent is faint but familiar. "This is yours," he says. "However you'd like it to be." You turn to him. "And yours." He gestures down the hall. "For now." You nod, understanding. You'll merge lives gradually. This is Victorian England. Certain things are still paced, even after vows. He lingers in the doorway. "Good night, Ella Lenina." "Good night, Thomas." He pauses. Then, just before closing the door, he adds, "I'm glad it's you." And with that, the door clicks shut, and your new life begins. The days following your wedding feel like a dream trapped inside another dream. Everyone smiles at you differently now. The neighbors, the shopkeepers, even the postman. They all greet you with a kind of knowing warmth that wasn't there before. You are no longer Miss Hartwell. You're Mrs. Wetherb. It's a subtle shift, but one you feel in every interaction. Like a coat you weren't quite ready to wear but now can't remove. Your first week of married life is filled with visits and congratulations. Cousins stop by with flowers. Neighbors send fruitcakes wrapped in linen and ribbon. Your Aunt Margaret appears without warning one afternoon and proceeds to inspect your new home with the scrutiny of a seasoned general, offering unsolicited advice on everything from curtain maintenance to pantry organization. Thomas is endlessly patient through it all. He makes tea for guests. He listens attentively to every comment about lace edging and fireplace placement. And when you finally collapse into a chair after the last of the guests leaves each day, he brings you warm biscuits without asking and rubs your aching shoulders without a word. At night, you lie in the bed you now share, listening to the unfamiliar creaks of a house adjusting to new occupants. Sometimes you speak in hushed tones about the future, about the children you might have, the travels you might attempt, the life you're starting to build. Other times, you simply lie beside one another, letting silence fill the spaces words can't quite reach. 1 week after the wedding, you host your first formal dinner as a married woman. It's not elaborate, just your parents, Aunt Caroline, and 2 of Thomas's colleagues from the office. But still, it feels monumental. The fish is slightly overcooked. The custard takes too long to set. And Mary, bless her, forgets to polish the silver forks. But no one complains. Your mother compliments the parsnips 3 times. Aunt Caroline pronounces the wine bracing. And Thomas squeezes your hand under the table as if to say, "We did it. It's real." After dessert, the gentlemen retire to the parlor for cigars while the ladies gather in the sitting room. Aunt Margaret, slightly flushed from her second glass of port, launches into a monologue about her own early marriage. A tale full of domestic missteps and comedic disasters that sound hilarious in hindsight but must have felt catastrophic at the time. You catch yourself laughing, genuinely realizing how good it feels to have a moment that isn't about performance or perfection, just people sharing stories. Thomas returns shortly after, taking a place beside you with ease. He listens to the chatter, adds a few comments when asked, but mostly just stays near, his presence steady and reassuring. Later, when everyone's gone and the fire has burned low, he turns to you with a small smile. "Do you feel married yet?" he asks. You consider the question. "I think I do." "Good," he says, standing to stoke the embers. "So do I." In the weeks that follow, routines begin to form. You wake just after dawn and dress in the quiet blue light of morning. Breakfast is simple: toast, eggs, tea. Thomas leaves for work by 8:30, briefcase in hand and hat at just the right angle. You see him off at the door, then begin your own tasks. Managing a household, you quickly learn, is a full-time occupation. There are bills to track, deliveries to schedule, linens to mend, and staff to supervise. Mary proves indispensable, always a step ahead, always discreet. The 2 of you develop a quiet partnership. She teaches you things you didn't realize you didn't know. How to spot when the coal man cheats the weight, how to keep moths from the wardrobe, how to remove ink stains from silk without leaving a trace. In the afternoons, you write letters or read by the fire. Sometimes you take walks to the market, your gloved hands tucked into a muff against the cold. You grow familiar with the butcher, the baker, the boy who sells violets from a pushcart. And slowly, without quite realizing it, you begin to feel settled. Not in the dull, resigned way people often mean it, but in the grounding sense of knowing you're where you belong. Of course, not every day is smooth. Some mornings Thomas wakes with a headache and speaks little. Some evenings he returns later than usual, weariness clinging to him like smoke. There are small disagreements over money, over timing, over your mother's frequent unannounced visits. But even in tension, there's respect. Thomas listens when you speak. He apologizes when he's wrong. And when you make mistakes, he never mocks or belittles you. It's not a perfect marriage, but it is a kind one. And in your world, that is everything. One Sunday morning in late January, you find yourself standing in front of the mirror, brushing your hair when a sudden dizziness makes you grip the table. Passes quickly, but something feels different. That evening, you skip dinner, too nauseous to eat. Mary notices. She says nothing. But the next day, she serves your tea with a knowing glance and a slice of dry toast. A week later, she speaks up. "Forgive me, ma'am," she says gently, "but I think you might consider seeing Dr. Kelby." You frown. "Why?" She smiles, a hint of warmth in her eyes. "Women know these things, miss." 3 days later, the doctor confirms it. You're with child. The news lands in your chest like a pebble dropped into deep water. Small at first, then rippling outward, touching everything. Thomas is stunned, then overwhelmed, then quietly, incredibly pleased. "You'll be an extraordinary mother," he says one night, resting his hand over your belly. "And I'll do everything I can to deserve both of you." The days that follow are filled with new preparations. Lists, advice, letters from your mother filled with instructions and warnings. Visits from Aunt Margaret bearing bundles of old baby linens and unsolicited wisdom. You feel everything more acutely now. Smells, sounds, emotions. There are moments of elation and moments of fear so sharp it makes your breath catch. But in every moment, Thomas is there, sometimes silent, sometimes speaking nonsense to make you laugh. Always steady. And so begins the next chapter. One you hadn't dared dream might come so soon. A new life, already unfolding inside you. Being a married woman, you begin to sense the true weight of your new social standing. It's not just a title. It's a constant presence, shaping how others address you, how you move through rooms, even how you carry yourself down the street. You notice it in the way neighbors nod just a little more respectfully, how shopkeepers call you ma'am with greater intent, how unmarried girls glance at you with curiosity laced with wonder. That evening, Thomas returns home after work to find you bustling about in the kitchen. You've prepared dinner yourself, not an elaborate affair, just roast chicken with potatoes and buttered greens. But you've peeled, chopped, stirred, and plated every bit of it in your own modest kitchen. When you serve the meal, Thomas looks surprised, pleasantly so. "Did Mary help?" he asks, eyeing the steaming dishes. "No," you reply with a proud little smile. "All mine." He takes a bite, chews thoughtfully, then looks at you with unguarded admiration. You're becoming quite the housewife. Your cheeks warm at the compliment. "I'm still learning," you say. But Mrs. Davies is a kind instructor. Mrs. Davies, your elderly neighbor, has taken to offering gentle advice on everything from boiling preserves to layering blankets for a baby's crib. You hadn't expected to enjoy these chats over garden hedges, but there's something soothing in the shared rituals of womanhood. Knowledge passed hand to hand like folded linen. As the weeks pass, your figure begins to change subtly. The dresses you once wore with ease now pinch at the waist. Your corsets are loosened. Mary helps you alter 2 gowns to accommodate your growing shape. You avoid social calls not out of shame, but for the sheer exhaustion that follows even the shortest conversation. The neighborhood knows, of course. News travels faster than post, but the congratulations that come your way are mostly sincere. Mrs. Pratt brings over a basket of sweet buns. The butcher slips you the choicest cuts, unspoken goodwill in his grin. Even Aunt Caroline softens, her usual sharp remarks tempered with genuine concern. Thomas is cautious, gentle. He reads every book he can find on childbirth and keeps an eye on your appetite, your mood, your sleep. You find this both endearing and a little amusing. Sometimes you tease him. You're acting like you're the one expecting. Maybe I am, he replies. Expecting joy, fear, chaos, all of it. Your days settle into a quieter rhythm. You take shorter walks now, stopping often to rest. You spend hours stitching small garments, tiny socks, bonnets, gowns with drawstrings at the neck. Each one feels like a promise, a whisper of what's coming. At night, Thomas lies beside you and talks softly to the child growing within you. We're waiting for you, he says. Take your time, but we're ready. Your due date is marked in pencil on the kitchen calendar, circled like a feast day. But the weeks crawl by without incident. Winter deepens. Snow drifts against the window panes. Fires are kept lit through the day and night. You nap often, wrapped in blankets, a book balanced on your belly, unread. Then, one night in early March, you wake with a jolt. It's not pain exactly, but something unmistakably new. A tightening, a shift, a beginning. You sit up in bed, breathing slowly. The room is dark. The clock ticks steadily on the mantel. Thomas stirs beside you. Are you all right? I think, you say. It's time. His eyes widen. He throws back the covers, fumbling for his dressing gown. Within moments, the house springs to life. Mary lights every lamp she can find. The midwife, Mrs. Casterly, is sent for immediately. The next hours blur. Contractions come like waves, first gently, then relentlessly. Mrs. Casterly arrives and takes charge with calm efficiency. Mary fetches water. Thomas paces. The clock ticks. The fire hisses. You grip the bedpost, sweat clinging to your temples. The pain is consuming, elemental. Everything else, politeness, modesty, reason, burns away. And then, just as you think you can bear no more, you hear it. A cry. A high, raw, beautiful sound. Your body collapses into relief. Mrs. Casterly wraps the baby, your baby, in soft flannel and places the small, squirming bundle into your arms. It's a boy, she says, smiling. You stare down at the tiny face, red and crumpled and perfect. Thomas is beside you, pale with awe. He reaches out and touches the baby's cheek with one trembling finger. What shall we name him? You whisper, exhausted but glowing. Thomas doesn't hesitate. Edward. You nod. Edward Hartwell Weather. The name settles over the room like sunlight breaking through snow clouds. Over the next few days, the house transforms. Visitors come bearing gifts, blankets, books, silver rattles. The air smells of lavender and milk. The cries of a newborn echo in the hallways. And through it all, you learn to navigate this new version of life, one sleepless hour at a time. You feed him, rock him, sing to him when no one else is listening. You trace the soft down on his head, memorize every finger and toe. Your world has shrunk to the size of a crib, and yet, somehow, it feels wider than ever before. One evening, you find Thomas standing silently in the nursery, just watching your son sleep. He looks like you, he says. No, you reply. He looks like us. He wraps his arm around your shoulders. Together, you stare down at this tiny new person, this living proof that love can grow into something solid and real and breathing. And in that moment, nothing else matters. I used to believe I might never marry. You admit one dull February afternoon, the rain tracing lazy lines down the window. You're sitting in your usual spot beside the fire, mending one of Thomas's shirts, your needle moving through the fabric in slow, thoughtful stitches. I imagined I'd become one of those curious, eccentric women, traveling alone, writing books, causing the neighborhood endless gossip. Thomas, reading nearby in his armchair, lowers the newspaper and tilts his head. You still could, you know? Write books. Why not? You're sharp, you see patterns others miss. You always have something interesting to say. The suggestion catches you off guard. In your world, respectable women don't write books, unless they're full of moral lessons or stories for children. But you can't deny the flicker of intrigue it stirs in you. The idea of seeing your thoughts take shape in ink, of creating something lasting, something entirely your own. That night, after Edward has fallen asleep and the house settles into its evening hush, you take out a clean sheet of paper and begin writing. First, just sentences, observations, then something more structured, half a scene, the beginning of a dialogue. Feels clumsy and raw, but it's yours. Days pass, then weeks. You keep writing in stolen moments, while Edward naps, while the soup simmers, in the quiet hush before Thomas returns from work. You don't tell anyone, not even him, not yet. Spring comes slowly, shy and tentative after a long winter. The trees bud cautiously. The streets fill with the sweet scent of thawing earth and fresh blooms. Edward begins to crawl, his chubby hands slapping across the nursery floor. You laugh more now, loudly, freely. Sometimes you catch Thomas watching you with a look that says he's still surprised by how lucky he feels. One day in April, you leave Edward with Mary and walk to the park alone. It's the first time in months you've had more than a few moments to yourself. The air is mild. The trees overhead rustle softly. You bring a notebook in your reticule, and beneath a flowering chestnut tree, you write 3 full pages without stopping. You feel like yourself again, only a new version. Not Miss Hartwell, not just Mrs. Wetherb, but a woman made from both. By summer, your manuscript fills a drawer. You've begun shaping it into something more coherent. Fiction, yes, but drawn from truth. The quiet tensions of marriage. The small rebellions of girlhood. The invisible load women carry from one generation to the next. You read parts of it to Thomas one evening after dinner. He listens, elbows on the table, his expression unreadable. When you finish, there's a long silence. Then, you have to keep going. His confidence steadies you in a way nothing else could. You begin editing, polishing, rewriting late into the night by candlelight. Edward starts speaking. His first word is clock, shouted with glee every time he spots the brass one on the mantel. He toddles through the halls, knocking things over, laughing with abandon. He brings chaos and light. You receive your first letter of interest from a publisher in November. It's cautious, non-committal, but it ends with the words, "We would be pleased to see further work." You read it twice, then fold it neatly and place it inside your keepsake box beside Edward's first curl and a pressed violet from your wedding bouquet. Years pass in pages. You write, you mother, you live. Some days are loud with joy, birthdays, picnics, unexpected letters. Others are quiet and heavy, You lose Thomas's father, then 2 winters later, your own. Grief settles like dust in the corners of your days. You learn to live around it. Edward grows, taller, stronger. He asks questions that startle you with their depth. He breaks his arm climbing a tree. He wins a prize at school. He starts keeping secrets. You love him more than you thought humanly possible. And still, he pulls away inch by inch as all children must. One night, after he's gone to bed, Thomas finds you rereading your manuscript. It's been sitting for months, untouched. Do you ever think about publishing again? He asks gently. Sometimes. You should. I'm not the same as I was when I wrote it. That's exactly why you should. And so you begin again. A new story this time. One about a young woman who thought she wanted one life, but discovered something better. Something quieter, deeper, and infinitely more complex. You are no longer the girl who sat by the parlor window waiting for a stranger in a black frock coat. You are the woman who invited him in, built a life beside him, and kept discovering new versions of herself in the process. As the candle burns low and the clock chimes midnight, you keep writing. Because stories deserve to be told. And because you finally understand, yours was never small. It was just beginning.